For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those with Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
Hola.
And before we get into today's hotness, we're going to ask you to jump into the likes, into the comments, make sure you're mashing the subscribe button, and maybe tell a friend about it because we are coming in hot today, Lenny.
We are coming up on the biggest fight of the year, Matt.
I hate that you did that because, like, the year just started.
But it's the biggest fight of the year.
It is. You're not wrong.
It's even at the end of this year, it could be the biggest fight of the year.
I mean, it depends on what this other guy does, right?
It depends on the outcome. It depends on what 2020 wants to do. If it's like 2020, well, if 2021, I mean.
Yeah.
If it wants to be like 2020, we're screwed.
Let's remain positive. We're going to move ourselves away from that.
I'm very positive about this. Yeah.
This feels right because we're talking about Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, a.k.a. DP. Yeah. And we're going number dose on this one, baby.
2 times the fun.
2 times the pleasure?
Yes, sir.
Double mint.
But before we can get to the present and break down that fight.
Yeah, we can't talk about where we're going until we know where we've been.
Yeah, we should hit the rear view.
Yeah.
Kind of see what's going on in the past.
Yep.
You know, Back to the Future style. We'll get there.
I mean, it kind of all starts in a magical year. Some didn't think it would be a magical year, but it kind of was. 2012.
2012.
Yeah, it gets really interesting.
Quite the year.
I think we'll start it off with Conor.
My guy.
Right? Yeah, your guy.
Yeah, my guy. So Conor at this point, it's the year 2012. Jumanji has not happened. We're still going. And he's actually, little known fact, on his way to his first set of double championships.
Yeah.
So he beat a guy named Dave Hill by rear naked choke, something that we rarely see, if actually never since then. A rear naked choke from Conor McGregor. Well, he's received a couple, but not given them out. But he goes on to fight Ivan Bushinger. It's the end of the year. It's December. He's going in there. He's going to get the lightweight strap, and he does it in typical Conor fashion with a beautiful step back left hand. Drops this guy. Beautiful counter punch. You'd see something similar a little later on in his career, but this was just a huge moment. It launches him into the forefront of the MMA community. The tighter, like the more hardcore guys, and even gets a shout out by the likes of like Joe Rogan at this point.
Yeah. And while he's doing all that hotness, Dustin Poirier is slowly building his name, and he's doing it in a real workman's-like capacity. He starts off in the WEC, young guy. He's not really doing it in a flashy way. He's fighting the who's who of the WEC.
He gets down in the mud a little bit.
He's getting down and dirty.
When you think of the word grit, I think Dustin Poirier comes to your mind.
Yeah, he's definitely a name that comes up, and he's never really been given any handouts. His first fight in the UFC, they give him Josh Grisby. And if you don't know Josh Grisby, he went from UFC hot prospect to one of the tragic stories of MMA fighters. But we won't jump into that. What we will talk about is the fact that Dustin Poirier overcomes the adversity, I guess you could say, beats Josh Grisby. And he goes on to have quite an interesting career. In 2012, he starts it off by beating a household name by the name of Max Holloway.
Little known name.
Little known name. You probably wouldn't have known him then, but you definitely know him now. He was just starting his career. And it's kind of a big deal because that sets him up for a fight against the Korean Zombie, who just recently could have been fighting for a title. He's a perennial contender. He loses that fight, but he ends the year. It's a very, very good fight. Back and forth fight. It really shows his grit, and it's giving Dustin this gritty fighter tagline for the UFC, which is a big deal. And he ends the year by finishing Jonathan Brookins with a pretty impressive Darce choke. And this is the time where we're starting to think that this is where it could happen, and this is where their timelines kind of meet. Dustin does go on to fight Cub Swanson.
And this is kind of a standard pattern, unfortunately, like because you kind of just said it, right? Like, we're coming off this Brookins victory. And again, we're like, okay, he's lost to Chan Sung Jung. But no big deal there. No big deal. Really good guy. This is where he takes that next escalation. He's going to get Cub Swanson, a guy with another really good name, has lost to Jose Aldo for a title, so he's been in that mix. Yeah. This is a big guy to beat, a big point in his career, and I think we're all going into this with a little hype.
Yeah, we're going into it with some hype, and for one reason or another, it's a good fight, but it's it's kind of looked at in the monitor of another big fight where Dustin just can't really cross that threshold.
Yes.
But
another exciting one.
Another exciting fight. Yeah. Dustin's not a guy who's shying away from fights.
No, and like up until this point, I think the reason why he's able to maintain even with these losses on, that middle tier, because we have talked about in the past guys who sometimes you don't want people who only lose to the top dogs.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll beat everybody below it and they'll kill off.
Yeah, they kill off the talent, the potential.
But the reason he's always been able to stick around despite some of those things early in his career, his fighting style. His
fighting style is one to watch, and after the Cub Swanson loss, he starts rattling off some pretty big wins. You've got Eric Koch, who he beats in a unanimous decision. The common opponent that we're going to hear, Diego Brandao, who he took some shots in that fight. I think at one point he gets clipped, but in typical Dustin fashion, he's getting into these barn burners and starts digging in body shots, starts really working his boxing, relentless pressure.
He is the term like war of attrition.
Yeah.
He is that, right? Because
he's putting it on you.
It's kind of a wave because Brandao is hitting him kind of hard for the first couple minutes, and then it's like the back half of that round is just Poirier pressing him on the cage and just body shots.
Pouring it on, yes, so to speak.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
But he rounds out this impressive build-up with a big win over Akira Corsani. Yes. And while he's doing all this...
Conor is actually venturing over to the United States, actually.
Makes his way.
So he kicks off, he gets done being a double champ, and the UFC, of course, comes a calling because there's a certain feeling about this guy that he could be the next big name. And people may not know this, but when you look back at that time period, there was a question on what the next big name was going to be in MMA. Because John Jones is like growing, but there's still some questions. Like John Jones obviously he's still beating legends at this point, hasn't necessarily screwed up the way he would go on to, but there was always a little bit of skepticism.
Starting to see some signs.
Exactly. So in GSP's on his way out, you've lost a lot of major names, and it's like they need a guy to kind of step in. And Conor seems like he's perfect for it. He doesn't have the tattoos yet. He's not wearing suits the way he was just yet. He's got the shaved head though. And he just comes out and he follows up that next year. And he rattles off a beautiful win, a beautiful knockout in his first fight against Marcus Brbic. Does the cool little walk-off shimmy in his hands. And he shows up in Boston on his first fight in the United States. Gets the walkout on the prelims. Yeah. They dim the lights and everything and have these guys walk out. And he beats Max Holloway, the common name again. These guys have had a very similar run up to this point, right? Yeah. And Max Holloway, it's a great fight. Conor tears his ACL and has to take a little bit of time off at this point. But he wins in the process and actually shows out some really good grappling skills that a lot of people don't highlight all the time. Is that his jiu-jitsu, especially from a top game, and his takedowns in that fight were all very nice, but it wasn't early Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Max Holloway,
very
young. Being young was like 21,
but when you want to talk about talented, there's a reason why this kid's on the list.
Exactly. So he goes back to Ireland and he beats Diego Brandao. He brings the UFC back to Ireland and has this barn burner of a fight with this guy. One round, chases him around the octagon, knocks him out. It's amazing. The crowd goes nuts, and it gets us to this point.
Pinnacle, summit.
And it couldn't have been better because it's like one of those things where in fighting, sometimes two polarizing figures just meet each other, right? And you have the brash, up-and-coming guy who really, like from most people's perspective, is all bark, no bite, right? Yeah. Hasn't earned a damn thing in the UFC.
He's kind of being given a golden ticket to the show, so to speak.
Yes, he's on the main card. He's doing press conferences with Daniel Cormier and John
Cena, nice job, buddy.
John Jones. Doing press conferences with like the title guys. Like he's being billed right next to John Jones, the guy we're talking about at this point, had, I believe, a Nike contract.
Yeah.
Like he was
it's a pretty big deal
on his way up, right?
Becoming mainstream.
This is where they see him. And it's like Dustin's like, yo, you tried feeding me to Josh Crispy when I fucking got here. Right?
Like you're feeding this guy with a silver spoon.
You've been feeding me to everybody since I got here.
Yeah.
Whenever a guy you wanted to get to a title needed to win, you fed him to me.
And not only that, in these bigger matchups,
or I got fed to them.
Yeah, same thing, but you're still feeding them to me, right? Because they gave him those opportunities where it's like, all right, you think you're hot shit? Boom, here's Chang Sung Jung. Here's Cub Swanson.
That is the other way to look at it. Like he did squander some of those opportunities as well.
That gives Dustin this chip on his shoulder, man. And it has this buildup of these two clashing kind of personalities and egos.
Blue collar worker, hasn't been given his fair shot in his mind yet. Guy who's just taking his shot over here and being like, he literally starts calling his shots. Because this is the birth of Mystic Mac, right? This is the birth of Conor McGregor saying, it's done in one.
I like the way you put that. The rise of Mystic Mac and supposedly the unearthing of the diamond, Dustin Poirier.
For those with good taste.